Hi, I'm Anita. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be revisiting a tutorial that I did last year. This was one of my first videos and I wasn't too wild about the quality of how it came out. And I've made some changes since then to this particular design on the Dagger Fern earring. I'm going to be adding some embellishment, and this is using 2-hole dagger beads. Here's a glimpse of the first pair of dagger beads I made, first tutorial I did. If you want to check that out, I'll include the link below. But I think this is going to be a much better tutorial for you. We're going to be adding some embellishing into the center of the earring, and we're going to do the finishing off slightly different from what I did in that original video. So here's a glimpse of the materials you're going to be needing. I will have links in the description box below with all of the materials used and where you can find these. So if you click more below the video, you'll get all the details, including a link to my website, which you will be able to purchase these on my website as well. So check it out because I do have periodic sales throughout the year. All right, so here's what we're using today. I believe these are 15 by 9 millimeter dagger beads. Now the important thing to note is that these are 2-hole dagger beads. So you want to make sure that that's what you're using, are 2-hole dagger beads. You're going to need a total of 26 beads, and that's 13 for each earring. I'm also using 11/0 seed beads. These are Miyuki in galvanized gold. You'll need a pair of earring hooks, and I'm using wire guardians for today. I'm also using 8-pound fireline. Now you can get by with 6-pound. I'm using 8-pound because that's going to give it a little bit more firmness. And I'm using a size 10, not 12, beading needle. Sorry about that. Size 10 beading needle is what we're using. You can use a 12 as well. So we will go ahead and get our needle threaded and we'll get started. So before we get started, I wanted to give you a side-by-side comparison of the original design of this earring without the embellishment, and here's what we're making today, which I think this looks really classy and it adds an extra interesting pop of color down the center. So that's what we're going to be doing today, the one on the right. So go ahead and get your materials together and let's get going. All right, you're going to thread your needle with about 1 wingspan or a yard's worth of 8-pound fireline. And we're going to start by picking up our first dagger bead. So each earring will need 13 of these dagger beads, a total of 26. So I'm going to come in from the bottom hole like this. Pull my thread through, and you're going to leave about a 6-inch tail, just long enough to weave in later. So just a short tail like that. Now I'm going to come back through the top hole like this. Pull your thread. Now we're going to come back through the bottom hole like that. Pull that nice and snug. And now we're going to go back through our top hole right there. So that's what you should have to start. Tail thread's coming out the bottom, your working thread is coming out the top. So now we're going to start adding our next dagger bead. So what we're going to do is when we pick up our new dagger bead, we're going to come in through the bottom hole. So from here, I'm going to come in this direction, and I'm going to pull my thread to bring that bead down. Just try to get that tail thread out of the way. That's just going to slide right next to your other bead like that. So from here, I'm just going to pick it up and hold it between my fingers. It's a little bit easier to work that way. And I'm going to bring my thread back through the top hole of my dagger bead. Right there. Pull that through. Now I'm going to add an 11/0 before I pick up my next dagger bead. So we're going to pick up an 11/0, go through the top hole of your next dagger bead, pull that together, and that's going to nestle between your beads like that. So we're coming out of this top hole, we're going to come back through the bottom hole and also through the top hole of the center bead and the bottom hole of this left bead. So if you can't do it in one, because the angle is going to make it a little tough to get your needle through, so you can do in increments of 1 or 2 beads at a time. So now I'm going through the bottom hole like this, pulling that nice and snug, and you want to draw that together like that. So now I'm going to come back through the top hole, the 11/0, and the top hole like that. So now we're going to add our next bead, and we're adding, so we're going to go through the bottom hole of our new bead. And it doesn't matter if you're going in this way or the other way. When you pull the thread, your bead is going to position right up next to your work. So there's our first new bead for the next row, like that. Now we're going to bring our needle back through the top hole, right there, pull, and we're going to pick up an 11/0 before we get our next bead, and then our second bead will be through the top hole, like that. So bring that down, and that should position on the left side, like that. So now from here, we're going to come down the second hole on that same bead, and then we're also going through the top hole of the one below it. And we're also going to go through the 11/0, the bottom hole of the top hole of this next bead, and then the bottom hole of our outer right bead. So it's really starting to angle now. So I'm going to get my needle through here, and I can get it through these next 3 beads like that. So we'll pull that through like that. Now I'm going to come through the top hole and the 11/0 and the top hole of my left bead. And that is stepping me up to add my next row. So from here I'm going to pause for a moment, and I'm going to put a needle on this tail thread so we can weave that in and get that out of the way. All right, I have my tail thread threaded on a new needle, and my working needle, I just set that down for the moment, and I'm just going to weave this through a couple of times. Right now my thread is coming out of this bottom hole of this dagger bead. I'm going to go in through the top hole. I'll do a half hitch knot right here, coming under a thread bridge. Pull your thread nice and tight. Now I'm going to come through this bottom hole of this next bead. Now I'm going to come through the top hole and the 11/0, and I'm going to come through this last top bead here, and I'm going to cut my thread off. You don't need too many knots on that reinforcing because you've been through your bottom bead several times when we first started. So I think 1 knot should be enough. So now we're ready to continue adding beads. So we're coming out of this top bead or top hole right here on our dagger. We're going to pick up our new dagger by coming in through the second hole. Pull that together. Now we're going to come through the top hole of that same bead, pull our thread through. Now we're going to pick up an 11/0 and our new dagger bead coming in through the top hole. Bring that down. So now you have to come down through the bottom hole of that last bead we added, and now we're going to come through the top hole of these two center beads, including the 11/0 in the middle. So go ahead and bring your needle through a few beads at a time. Pull that through. Nice and snug. Going through the next center bead top hole and the bottom hole of the one on the left. Pull that through. And now I'm going to step up by coming through the top hole, the 11/0, and the top hole of these two beads at the top. And you're going to continue adding beads in that manner until we get to the very top. So I'm going to continue adding, and I'm going to fast forward this process, and then when I get to the last two, I'll walk those through. I'll walk through those with you as well. So go ahead and continue adding your dagger beads. All right, so I'm coming down to my last two dagger beads, coming out of this top hole of this last dagger bead. So I'm going to bring my new dagger bead in through the second hole. Now that I've added that, I'm going to come back through the top hole of that same bead, pick up an 11/0, and then go through the top hole of the new bead that I'm going to add. Pull that down. So try to get that snug up against your existing work. Now you're going to come down through the bottom hole of the bead we just added and the top hole of these two center beads, including the 11/0 in the center. Now I'm coming out of the bottom hole of the bead on the left. And now I'm going to finish this step by coming through the top hole, my 11/0, and the top hole of this last bead. So now I'm going to pick up 3 11/0s, and I'm going to add my wire guardian. So I've got 3 11/0s, my wire guardian, pull that down. Now I'm going to come through the other side of my wire guardian. Pinch your fingers and make sure the thread sits between the channel, like that. Pick up 3 more 11/0s. Now we're going to come down where we started on our top hole of our dagger bead, right there. Pull that through. Now we're going to reinforce by going back through the 11/0, the top hole, the 3 beads, your wire guardian, and then coming back down this side. So we're going to go through like that. Now we're going to go up through the 3 beads and your wire guardian. Now we're going to come down the wire guardian, and your 3 beads, and also through that top hole. Pull and pinch your work. We're going to reinforce that one more time. So that's what we have so far. At this point, I'm going to embellish the sides just by adding a couple of 11-ohs on each side, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, so my thread is coming out of this top hole of my dagger bead. I'm going to pick up 2 11-ohs. And this is optional. If you don't want to do this extra embellishment, you can certainly finish it off right here. I'm going to just come down through this second hole and through this next top hole bead and my 11-oh. Pull that through. Now I'm going to advance my needle up through this top hole of that center bead and the bottom hole of this dagger bead. Going to pick up 2 more 11-ohs in gold, and I'm going to come down the top hole of my outer dagger bead right there. So from here, we're just going to weave our thread back and forth down through, and you're just basically going to follow your thread path going backwards. Tie a couple of knots, and then we'll cut this off. So I'm coming out the center here. As you notice, I was going down this direction, and it doesn't matter which way you go. We're going to clip our thread off right here. So all I have to do is add my wire hook or ear wire. So I'm going to open this up by twisting this towards me. Just place this on and close your ear hook. And it doesn't matter which way, because both sides are the same. So here are our beautiful tropical fern earrings. Aren't those gorgeous? Let's see if I can get a close-up here. Stunning colors. It really makes me think of tropical when I look at these colors. Absolutely beautiful and so easy to make. This concludes today's tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'm so glad you joined me today. There's going to be links in the description box below with all of the materials you need for today's tutorial. I also have my website, and there is a link for that as well, and you might want to check it out because these are available on my website if you'd like to buy a pair. And I also run sales throughout the year, so don't miss out on those. Also, if you're not a subscriber, I hope that you do subscribe, and please give this video a thumbs up. For those of you that have subscribed, I really appreciate you coming back to watch my videos and leaving comments and such. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy beading, and I'll see you next time.